Some call it the gift of feedback, but it doesn't always feel like a gift. We all get feedback, solicited or not. It's not just what gets ranked, it's what gets thanked, commented on, invited back, or dropped. How you handle feedback has a profound impact on your performance, your leadership, your relationships, your life. Yet few leaders report that feedback is working. Sheila Heen is here to help. As a founder of Triad Consulting Group and a lecturer at Harvard Law School, she has spent years researching how people have or don't have these difficult conversations. The author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, Difficult Conversations and Thanks for the Feedback, Sheila is here to offer us a framework for eliciting value out of the feedback we get, even when it's off base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, we're not in the mood. Let's welcome Sheila Heen.
I am delighted to be here to talk to you about feedback. Because the truth of the matter is, we swim in an ocean of feedback. What do I mean by feedback? Feedback is all of the information available to you about you. It's how we learn about ourselves and the impact that we're having on other people and on the world. So it can be formal or informal. It can be spoken or unspoken. So yes, it is your performance review, everybody's favorite time of year. But it's also the way your daughter's eyes light up when she sees you in the audience. It's those helpful little parenting tips from your in-laws. It's the pain in my left foot right now, an old running injury telling me something about my age and maybe my judgment in wearing heels this morning. And it's the little signals that you're getting from the person next to you. Check it out. I mean, maybe you just met yesterday or even this morning, but I think they really like you. I think they think you're a particularly interesting and insightful person. Yeah? I mean, did you notice how happy they were to see you this morning? Just turn and confirm that with them right now, would you? So the bottom line here is that feedback is my relationship with the world and the world's relationship with me. Now, how did I get into this? I spent 20 years with the Harvard Negotiation Project with a specialty in particularly difficult conversations and traveling the world helping leaders tackle their most important and most challenging conversations. Now, the first thing we do with any group is that we ask them, all right, what are your toughest conversations? I mean, what would you like some help with? And they give us examples. They describe their struggles, and I take them and I write them down on this list here. Because we're going to draw from this list during our time working together. Now, over the years, my co-author Doug Stone and I started to notice something, a pattern to these lists. And what we started to notice is that feedback was showing up on these lists a lot. In fact, to put a finer point on it, feedback is on these lists 100% of the time. It did not matter what industry we were in. It did not matter whether we were working with a global corporation or a school system or a church community. It didn't matter whether I was in Dubai or Dubuque, Iowa, in Singapore or South Africa, Shanghai or Chicago. People all over the world struggle with feedback conversations. Now, this is a little bit of a problem, right? I mean, because these are the conversations that don't just drive individual development and performance. These are the conversations that drive organizational learning, that influence employee engagement, that enable or disable cross-functional collaboration. I mean, these are the conversations that enable leaders to get the best out of their people. And by the way, people to get the best out of their leaders. So let me ask you, raise your hand if you feel like feedback conversations in your organization are not working as well as you want them to or need them to. Just raise your hand right now. Okay, can we talk for just a second? Just time out. Can I give you guys some feedback? You are terrible at this hand-raising thing. Okay, and by the way, at the sites, don't think that you're off the hook just because you think I can't see you. Because some of you are doing great, but others not so much. Okay, this is about feedback. I have the microphone. That's a little bit of an advantage up here. But you guys talk back to me like this. You got your hands, okay? So I'm going to give you a little coaching. Raise your hand if you are able to raise your hand. Excellent. Keep it up if you hate raising your hand. All right, we're good. Are we ready to get back to the topic? You guys are all warmed up. All right. Now, for the first 10 years, to try to address this challenge of helping people have better feedback conversations, we did what I think everybody does, which is that we taught leaders and managers how to give feedback more skillfully, more clearly, more often. Organizations spend billions of dollars every year teaching people how to give feedback. You ready? Here it comes. How many of you at some point in your career have been to a session on how to give feedback more effectively? Raise your hand. Did it help? Okay, please say yes, because I do some of that work. But you know what? My experience is yours, which is there's a lot you can learn to be more skillful and more clear, but it just wasn't solving the problem. And then one day, it suddenly occurred to us. In any exchange between giver and receiver, it's the receiver who's in charge. It's the receiver who decides what they're going to let in and what sense they make of it and whether and how they choose to change. Holy cow, maybe we've been going about this totally backwards. Maybe we should be focusing not on teaching givers how to give. Maybe we should be trying to figure out what's so hard about receiving feedback. What if we could see receiving feedback as a skill that we can all get better at? And we could enable people to actually drive their own learning, to get value and learning even out of feedback that is unfair and off-base and poorly delivered. Because look, I don't know about you, but the givers in my life are kind of terrible at it, right? I mean, they're difficult themselves, they don't have enough time, so if I'm going to actually help drive some of my own learning, I've got to figure out how to learn even from feedback that's off-base and poorly delivered. So what have we learned about this in the last few years? Let's start with this. Part of the problem when receiving feedback is that feedback sits at the junction of two core human needs. On the one hand, we do want to learn and grow. I mean, this is a big piece of what the happiness research tells us makes life satisfying and fun, right? It's why you come to the Leadership Summit, right? You get new insights, new ideas, new ways to approach old problems. It's exhilarating. It is joyful. How many of you, by the way, play golf? Yeah, this is the only thing that explains the relationship between human beings and the game of golf. Okay? Because that occasional good round, forget that occasional good shot tricks you into thinking you're getting better at it. You're not. But this drive and thirst for learning and mastery and getting better means feedback should be joyful. Here's the problem. This bumps into a second human need. The need to feel accepted and respected and loved the way we are now. And the very fact of feedback can suggest that how I am now is not quite A-okay. That my friends and loved ones want a few upgrades to my performance or my personality. This helps me understand why I feel conflicted about feedback, that there are times I've got a great mentor, I can see myself improving, and it is exhilarating. And yet, feedback can also be among the most painful experiences in life. How many of you, however, would say that some of the most important things you have learned so far in life have come out of some of your most painful experiences? Yeah, what is up with that? I mean, why can't we have a pain-free learning system? Part of me wishes I could offer you that. But for me, a lot of this work is about better understanding the pain in order to get to the learning faster. What do we need to learn? Well, let me actually start by suggesting that although we throw around this word feedback, There are actually 3 different kinds of feedback with very different purposes. And we actually, as individuals, need all 3 kinds in order to learn and grow. Now, the easy way to remember them is ACE, A-C-E. But just to make this more challenging for you, I'm going to start and do them backwards. So let's start with evaluation. Evaluation rates or ranks you against a set of criteria or against your peers. It tells you how you're doing, where you stand, and what to expect. So yes, your performance review meets expectations, which sounds to you like, really, you still work here? That's evaluation. So is your time in the 5K race. So is your cholesterol numbers. In your personal life, that conversation? So where's this relationship going? That's an evaluation conversation. I want to know where I stand so I know what to expect or not expect, as the case may be. Second kind of feedback is coaching. Coaching is anything that helps you get better at something, to grow your skill, your knowledge, your efficiency, or your effectiveness. Now, in the business world, coaching has become a term of art, executive coaching, to refer to a particularly elicitive way to help someone else learn. That's included here, but I'm including the broader category of anything aimed to help you learn. Mentoring, advice, suggestions, correction, all of that counts as coaching. This is the engine for learning. Third kind of feedback, appreciation. Appreciation says, I see you, I get you. You matter around here. Sometimes when people say, I wish I got more feedback around here, what they really mean is, I wish someone noticed that I work here. I put so much blood and sweat and tears into our jobs, I'm not sure anybody even notices. Now, appreciation keeps us motivated. Coaching helps us actually get better. Evaluation tells us where we stand. As an individual for you, pick a context on your team, in your marriage. How much of each of these are you getting? And what would you like more of? How many people would say, particularly at work, one of the things I wish I got more of is coaching. Yeah? I don't get much coaching. If that is the case for you, it doesn't surprise me. Because as you become more senior in any organization, typically you get fewer and fewer people willing to take the risk to give you candid coaching. They don't want to risk their relationship with you. Let's talk about your organization. Every organization needs all 3 kinds in order to thrive. And there are a couple things that typically happen. First thing that happens is that appreciation drops out. A US Department of Labor study found that 93% of American workers feel underappreciated at work. And of those who quit or left their jobs, lost talent, almost half cite being underappreciated as the primary reason that they left. Another thing that happens is that evaluation and coaching get tangled up together. And that's a problem because evaluation is the most emotionally loud. It's the one that we have the biggest reaction to. And so it drowns out the coaching. Well, let's test this. Think about when you got a paperback in college, right? What's the first thing you look at? The grade. You bet. You turn to the back, you look at the grade. Is there anyone here who does not do that or did not do that? Yeah, okay, we're all equally dysfunctional. That's fabulous. Depending on my reaction to the grade, well, that tells me whether I care about all the margin comments, which are actually the coaching that would help me get a better grade next time, right? This is what happens in performance reviews. We save up all of this developmental coaching. We dump it into the performance review. They're not listening. If the rating is lower than they expected, they're thinking, after all I did for you, you have never liked me. If the rating is better than I expected, I guess I don't need the coaching. We're all good. Even when we hear coaching, we don't always take it. What I want to do is ask you to think of a piece of coaching or advice that you have received at some point in your life that you rejected. You didn't take it. What I want to know is, why didn't you take it? Just write down, right now, why you didn't take it. Just jot down a couple words. All right, we actually put this question out to all of you over the last couple of weeks, and we got some great responses for why you turn away and reject coaching. So let's just take a look at a few of them. Front of the line, it was wrong. It was bad advice, right? It just didn't understand really what was going on or the context that I was in, or they don't really understand what I do anyway. Close behind that, by the way, I didn't respect them. I didn't like them. I didn't trust them. In a word, by the way, they were phony. Why should I listen to them? Or maybe the problem was me. It's just the coaching doesn't match with who I am. It's not aligned with my values. Or maybe I was just too stubborn or too young. Or let's not forget, I was in love. At least I thought I was. Now, there are thousands of reasons in this room and around the world for why you turned away feedback. And let me say loud and clear, getting better at receiving feedback does not obligate you to take the feedback. Chapter 10 in Thanks for the Feedback is all about boundaries, when and how to turn away feedback. Because if your yeses are not freely given, or if you can't say no, your yeses are not freely given. So all of the reasons that you just wrote down for why you turned away feedback are great reasons. Maybe. The problem is we decide too fast. As human beings, we are incredibly good at what we call wrong spotting. When feedback is incoming, I'm looking for what's wrong with it, right? If I can find what's wrong with it, I can safely set it aside and move on with my life. If it's right, I have to keep worrying about it. So we're incredibly good at finding what's wrong. Here's the problem. I promise you, you will always be able to find something wrong with the feedback you get. In fact, it may be 90% wrong. And that last 10% might be just what you need to learn and grow. So the fact that you have a triggered reaction to your feedback is not the end of the story. It's actually the beginning of the story. And as we looked at the thousands of reasons people give for why they turn away feedback, we actually found that there are really, at the core, three kinds of triggered reactions that as human beings we have when feedback is incoming. The first is what I call truth triggers. This is all about, is it true, is it accurate, is it good advice, or is it wrong? It's assessing the content of the feedback. Second, relationship triggers. This has everything to do with who's giving you the feedback. Because all feedback lives in the relationship between giver and receiver. And I will often have a bigger reaction to the who than I do to the what. Now, this is why your best friend can tell you things that nobody else can. But it's also why, okay, have you had this experience? My husband also teaches negotiation. You can imagine what the conversations at my house are like. Yeah. And he starts teaching at MIT, and he comes home one day, and he says, wow, you know that new colleague that I'm working with? He had the most interesting insight today. I think it's really going to change my teaching. And he proceeds to tell me what it is. And I say, mm-hmm. And he says, what? I say, nothing. And he says, what? All right. I have only been telling you that for 10 years. You know, this guy for 10 minutes, suddenly he's the genius. I mean, hey, you know, I'm only the person who knows you the best and loves you the most, but what do I know? I think sometimes the people closest to us trip that need to be accepted and respected the way we are now. In a way, they trip a relationship trigger in a way that strangers don't. And so we can hear something from them that we can't hear from those closer to us. Third kind of trigger, identity triggers. This is the story you tell about who you are, and it's also your particular wiring. In the course of this research, we found that individual sensitivity to feedback, how upset you get, and how long it takes you to recover can vary by up to 3,000%. How many of you would say, you know, I'm probably on the more sensitive end of that scale in terms of my sensitivity to feedback? It's quite upsetting, and it takes me a long time to recover. How many of you are on the insensitive end of that scale? Okay, I probably shouldn't call you insensitive, right? Maybe even keel, is that better? You're insensitive, you don't care what I call you, so never mind. But just for fun, why don't you all give feedback to each other? This is the challenge in organizations, which is you have people with very different profiles. Some who are like direct and late on the line, and I don't understand why you're overreacting. It's not that big a deal. You got to take it less personally. That is not helpful for the person who is sensitive and is trying to take in the feedback, not feel overwhelmed, and learn something from it. So just understanding your own profile can help you understand and manage your reactions. Because if you're sensitive, it can supersize the feedback and overwhelm you. And you're in a place where you can't learn. All right. So let me just say a word about culture, by the way, because as you know, the social norms for how we talk about feedback vary widely around the world and in any organization. Yeah? So how strong is hierarchy? How direct or indirect should we be? But our experience is that the internal triggered reactions that we have to feedback are actually deeply human and quite stable around the world. And the good news is that the skills you need in order to manage your reactions and then respond and get value and learning out of it are the same. So let's talk about those skills. Skill number 1 is actually not doing something. Not deciding whether it's right or wrong immediately, but instead first working to better understand what in the world the giver means. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to put a piece of feedback on the screen. I am going to bet that every single one of you have at some point in your lives received this feedback, given this feedback, or thought about giving it and thought better of it. You ready? I don't like the way those pants look on you. What in the world, if you just received this feedback, what in the world is the giver trying to tell you? What did you all just jump to? I know what you jumped to. That it's something about whether they fit, something about you, yeah? All right, let's just pause for a minute, because we've actually collected over the last year or two various things that givers actually meant when they said this phrase. And I'm going to take them from most innocuous to maybe most upsetting. So one might be, look, I've asked you not to wear those in the past, so you're being both humiliating and selfish. This actually is not about the pants. Have you noticed that? This is about our relationship. Yeah. Then we have, like, I just don't like the way those kinds of pants look on you. Like, lose the pleats. This is just not the best style. So it's a match between the pants and you. Now we're getting into it. Now the problem is starting to be a little bit more about you, yes? You've never had any taste. This is the kind of thing that people mock you for behind your back. I'm just trying to protect you from you. Now we're talking about your judgment, perhaps. This is not really about the pants. It's about something bigger. So here's the problem. Like I don't like the way those pants look on you, feedback usually arrives as a set of very frustratingly vague labels. And our instant reaction is to jump to what we think or fear they're trying to tell us, rather than pause just to say, can you just help me understand what you mean? What is it that you're referring to, and what is it that you're suggesting? Now, we actually asked all of you what kinds of labels, vague feedback labels, you hear in your world. We got some terrific responses. Let me share a few of them. I just need you to be more visionary. I need you to try a different approach, please. You need a sense of urgency. You've got to step it up. What in the world are they trying to tell you? Here are two of my favorites. Change your sermons. Which, by the way, was followed by, I don't know how, I just don't like them. Frustrating? Yeah. And then, you're kind of a mix of Charlie's Angels and Martha Stewart. This, by the way, was apparently intended as a compliment. I don't know what it means. You do intricate craft projects with really great hair? I don't know. So you're going to have to work hard first to understand what they're trying to tell you, then you can decide what you think about it. Now, there's a second complication to this, which requires an additional skill. You have to work not just to see what they mean, but to see yourself accurately. Because, as Bill talked about yesterday, we all have blind spots. I don't happen to have blind spots myself, actually. So my 3.4 got distributed to all of you, I think, just to keep the averages right. But I know you have blind spots. So seeing yourself accurately is really hard. How many of you have watched yourself on video or heard yourself on audio? Yeah, just let out the sound of that experience. Oh my goodness. Okay, I got further bad news. That's what everybody else sees every day. Yeah, sorry. Other people have information about you that is actually invisible to you, despite the fact that you have been with yourself your whole life. Is that not true? Is there anyone here who has not been with themselves their whole life? Because we have a separate room for you, actually. Yeah. So the kinds of things that show up in blind spots, here's a quick list. Facial expressions. The only face I can't see is my own. I can see myself in the mirror. I can't see myself in action in the meeting when I look stressed. Body language, tone of voice, habits that we're not aware that we have. And by the way, the impact that you have on other people is invisible to you. You're not at the meeting after the meeting, behind closed doors, when your team leaves and are like, oh, yeah, he's on the crazy train again. Yeah. So you're going to have to work at it if you are going to really see yourself as others see you and understand the impact that you're having, which is often not at all what you intend. What do you do in order to help do this? Phone a friend. I'm guessing you're already doing that, but you're not using your friends as well as you might. Let me say what I mean. Feedback is sometimes referred to as holding up a mirror. I'm going to suggest that there are two kinds of mirrors. The first is a supportive mirror. A supportive mirror shows you what you look like on your best day, under flattering light. When I get devastating feedback, I leave that meeting, I walk down the hall. I look for someone that I like and who I'm pretty sure likes me. I walk in their office. I'm coming into your office, by the way. I shut the door. What do I say? Oh my goodness, can you believe what Michael said? In front of the client, is he crazy? I mean, plus, he's worse at this than I am. Okay, I'm in your office, I'm saying this. What do I want you to say? Oh, forget it, you're great. He's crazy, you're right, he's even worse at this than you think he is. Right? I want you to join me in reassuring me that this one mistake or piece of feedback is not the whole story about who I am. We need supportive mirrors. We need them to get out of the distortions and feeling overwhelmed so that we can learn. By the way, is there anyone, when a friend comes to your office, who does not say those things? Because I can explain to you why you don't have friends. This is really important. All right, I'm in your office, I'm complaining, you're saying all the right things. How many of you often are secretly thinking in the back of your head, okay, Michael's difficult, he said it in the wrong way at the wrong time, but Sheila, he's not wrong. This is something you could work on. How many of you are thinking that? Yeah. Okay, guess what? When you're in your friend's office, they're thinking that about you. But you are not taking the next step to ask them to help you. So I'm going to suggest that there's a second kind of mirror, and when you're ready, what I'm going to invite you to do is to invite them to be an honest mirror. An honest mirror shows you what you look like right now when you're not at your best, and there's something you could work on. When you're ready, ask your friend, okay, is there anything right about this feedback? Is there anything I should pay attention to and start thinking about? Your friends can help you when you are ready, but you have to take this step. All right, so I'm imagining that there are a bunch of you out there, leaders who are thinking, this is so great, right? I'm going to buy this book, thanks for the feedback. I'm going to give it to my whole team. I'll give it to my whole department. Look, I'll just buy it for the whole organization. Everybody will get better at receiving feedback, and then they'll finally listen to me. Yeah? All right, my friends, if that's what you're thinking, first of all, don't get me wrong. I love that idea. I think that's a fantastic idea. The problem with the idea is that now you've got it backwards. The fastest way to change the feedback culture in any organization is for the leaders to become better receivers. Why? 3 reasons. Number 1, you'll actually start getting some good feedback. If you don't know what you need to work on as a leader, you know who does? Everybody else. They have a list. They have a secret list that they pass amongst each other of all the things you do that drive them crazy, that make it harder for them to do their job. But you have to ask. Number 2, you become a role model for what you value and what you expect, and you show them how to do it. If they see you wrestling with some unfair criticism from the customer or the client, but looking for what do we really need to pay attention to, what's legit about this? That's what they learn happens around here. Third, when you become a better receiver, you automatically become a better giver, and the quality of all of your feedback conversations goes up. How do you do that? First thing I'm going to suggest is something not to do. Do not leave this session and go out and say, so, got any feedback for me? Sheila says I'm supposed to ask you. That is a terrible question. That is the question we all use, but it is a terrible question because it puts people on the spot. What are they thinking? They're thinking, about what? Your performance, your personality, your pants? How honest am I supposed to be? What's the right answer? Instead, the key to getting valuable, helpful feedback is one thing. Not to do one thing, but to use the idea of one thing. So before tonight, I want to challenge you. Pick a person who matters in your life. They could be on your team, they could be your boss, a peer, a spouse, a teenager. If you want to spice it up a little bit. They got all kinds of advice for us, don't they? Ask them 2 questions. First, what's one thing you particularly appreciate about how I run this team or how I run that meeting or about what's going on right now? Partly because you need to feel seen for how hard you're already working. And partly because this tells you the impact, the positive impact you're having on them, that you don't want to lose while you start changing other things. But now you know what's coming, right? Second question to ask them, what's one thing you see me doing? Or maybe it's something I'm failing to do that you might suggest I change, or that you think is getting in the way. Notice that it's not, is there anything? To which they will say, no, can't think of a thing. If you assume there is one thing, they'll just pick something off the list, okay? They will have an answer like this. And you'll be like, you've been carrying that around for how long and you didn't tell me? They didn't tell you till they believed you wanted to know. Also, by the way, many of you tomorrow morning will get an email. Because overnight, they thought of the other things on the list that were more important. Of like, oh, shoot, I should have said this other thing. That's even more important. Don't tell them they've used up their one thing. Invite the richer conversation. In closing, I want to come back to this tension between wanting to learn and grow genuinely and the need to be accepted and respected the way we are now. This tension is not going to go away. I think it's part of the human condition. But it occurs to me that we do have a model for how to walk in this tension, and that model is Jesus Christ. This is God's love for us in a nutshell. He accepts us just the way we are now, in all of our brokenness and fear and limited understanding. And he commands us to learn and grow. When I was a little girl growing up in Nebraska, in the Evangelical Free Church, I think I assumed that most of my learning and growing was going to be a product of my relationship with God. If I learned to pray, and especially to listen, if I studied the scriptures, that would be the primary path to my growth. And don't get me wrong, those are crucial. They are what I am teaching my own children. But now that I'm a little bit more of a grown-up, my experience has been that the catalyst for much of my own growth has come here, in my relationships with the other people in my life, especially, by the way, the reluctant growth. That it's in relationship with each other that we learn to love more generously, to forgive more fully, that we get help to see the log in our own eye and not just the speck in someone else's, that we need each other in order to see our own limitations and where we need to grow next as Christians. And I'm reminded of those last few days on earth when Jesus is like, okay, guys, so I got to go. But don't worry, I'll be back. And I'm leaving you with the Holy Spirit, and especially I am leaving you with each other. Love each other the way that you love me. Counsel each other, teach each other, admonish each other, forgive each other in fellowship. When you invite and receive feedback, you will accelerate your personal growth and your professional growth, but you will also accelerate your spiritual growth. Learning to receive feedback from each other is what leadership and the Christian walk are all about. Thank you.